How dare you question that the oil would run out and bring ruin to this is the biggest industry in the United States. But he was proved correct. And now people have taken his methodology and applied it to the world energy oil supply. And it's an imprecise tool because the data on the rest of the world is not as precise as it was for the United States, and so there's a degree of imprecision about exactly where on the curve we are. Are we at the peak moment, just a little bit before? Is it going to come in 2008 or in 2010? I don't want to be exact about that prediction, but I think we are in peak territory. It's not going to rise much higher than we are today. And what will be added from now on will be primarily of the unconventional nature, Canadian tar sands, Arctic oil, and so forth. And it should be noted that these unconventional sources of oil come with a very high price tag in terms of their environmental consequences. And not a very high price tag, period. They're much more expensive to produce, but they also have huge environmental consequences as well.
I wanted to ask you about the term peak oil. You mentioned that when Hubbard came out with the theory, there was a bit of shock. Recently, the International Energy Agency warned in its World Energy Outlook report that there would be a supply-side crunch, that's a quote, in the period until 2015 involving an abrupt escalation in oil prices. But I didn't find the phrase peak oil in the report. Do you think that the phrase itself is taboo still to?
I think that there's some reluctance in the professional energy business to use that term, but it's not universal. If you look in the professional literature, you'll see many people who do use the term all the time. So I think that they just don't want to admit the fact that they scoffed at Hubbard and others who used that term in the past, and now they have to they have to acknowledge the fact that they were wrong, that we are reaching a peak in output. So yes. By the way, we should make very clear that what's true of oil is also true of natural gas. Natural gas will also reach a peak sometime in the future. Now, natural gas got started later than oil. And its commercial development occurred, in more or less another 50 years or so later than oil. So the curve of development hasn't proceeded as far as oil, although there's probably less natural gas available than there was oil. So the question of where we are on that curve is a little bit more complicated, but the literature, the professional literature I've consulted suggests that somewhere between 2020 and 2030 we're very likely to reach a peak of natural gas too. So we'll have a period, my guess is between 2010 and 2020 or 2025, where natural gas can make up a little bit for the decline of oil, can compensate, but then natural gas too will decline. So we can't assume that natural gas is going to save us. And coal also will reach a peak in production. Coal, although people say that coal is vastly abundant, and it's true that there's lots of coal, but as I say, we begin by using the richest ores first, and a lot of the world's most concentrated, most valuable coal seams have now been exploited. So we will read, and then it too will decline. Uranium is another substance that's finite. Here again, we've used up some of the world's most concentrated ore concentrations. Now, there's a lot of uranium in very small concentrations that can presumably be used, but we will see before long, probably before the middle of the century, the exhaustion of some of the richest uranium mines in the world. So we have to be very much aware of the fact that our existing energy sources are finite, that we're using them at a very rapid pace, and that at current rates of exhaustion, many of them will be at their peak or post-peak moment well before the middle of this century. And we had better be ready with alternative sources of energy on a very large scale by then, not laboratory scale, not small, teeny-weeny projects like you have now, but on a massive scale. And we are not moving fast enough to do that.
Yes, that was I was going to ask you about what the solutions would be. Are you optimistic that are you optimistic that, because this is a very dramatic topic, it's a very I dare say a bit apocalyptic. Are you optimistic that there are solutions and that they can be applied in time?
The problem is not the solutions. If you go to universities, to laboratories, you could probably find solutions and laboratory scale projects. But those are not going to solve anything, because the problem is, as I have described, that the need for energy is colossal, and it's growing at an exponential rate in many parts of the world. And we're relying on existing energy systems to supply most of the additional energy. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, virtually 90% of the world's energy supply in 2030 will come from fossil fuels, oil, natural gas, and coal. So we're not seeing the investment needed to convert the laboratory solutions which exist today on a scale large enough to supplant the existing paradigm. So no, I'm not optimistic at all. I'm optimistic in the ingenuity of humans to develop alternatives, but not on the willpower to convert those on a large scale to give us the energy we will need at the time in which we need it, in the time frame in which we need it. That's the problem we face.
All right. Well, Mr. Klare, this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
I think we have behind us an incredible year in terms of climate change science and in terms of climate change politics. As you know, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out this year with 3 very important reports. It's not a matter of the solution not being affordable. A large part of that solution is available to us today. What we need is political will. And the big question for me is, ministers, what is your political answer to what the scientific community is telling you so very clearly?